Today, let us see three-dimensional arrays. A three-dimensional array is a kind of multi-dimensional array. A multi-dimensional array means it is an array of arrays. So here you have three-dimensional arrays. So it can be considered as an array of two-dimensional arrays, or simply we can say that it is a collection of 2D arrays. So as we have seen in the previous session, one-dimensional array is having one subscript only, and coming to two-dimensional arrays, it will be having two subscripts, and in the same way, a three-dimensional array will be having three subscripts. The first subscript represents the block size of this array. Second subscript represents the row size, and the third subscript represents the column size. So here, if we are comparing it with the two-dimensional array, the two-dimensional array had two subscripts, that is row size and column size. In case of three-dimensional array, there will be an additional subscript that represents the block size or number of blocks in the array. Now, let us see how to declare a three-dimensional array. The syntax for declaring a three-dimensional array is given as data type, array name, block size, row size and column size. Here, data type specifies the type of elements in the array. Array name represents the name of the array, and the three subscripts are given in square brackets. First subscript is for block size, second subscript is for row size, and third subscript represents the column size of the array. Now, let us see an example. So, this is an array declared as a three-dimensional array. The name of the array is ARR, and the type of the values in this array is of integer type. First subscript is for block size. It gives the number of blocks in this array. And the second and third subscript represents the row and column sizes, which will be a two-dimensional array. So here you can say that it is an array of two-dimensional arrays. That means there are two blocks in this array, and each of these blocks will be having 3 by 3 matrices. There will be two 3 by 3 matrices in this array. That is what it means. So let us see how this will be arranged. So it will be having two different blocks, and each of these blocks will be having a 3 by 3 matrix. So the first block is given here. So this is a 3 by 3 matrix. 3 by 3 matrix means it is a two-dimensional array. So each of these will be having, each row will be having 3 elements in it, and there are 3 different columns in it. So this can be considered as a two-dimensional array. Similarly, the second block will be having a 3 by 3 matrix. This is also a two-dimensional array. So this is what a three-dimensional array means. It will be having two blocks. The first subscript represents the block numbers, and since it is 2 here, it will be having two blocks, and each of the block will be specified by the second and third subscripts. That is, here it is 3 by 3, 3. Therefore, it will be of 3 by 3 matrix. So this is what a three-dimensional array means. Now, coming to the initialization of the array. The three-dimensional array can be initialized in different ways. One way is given here. So, the initialization can be performed as int ARR 333. All the subscripts here represents the value 3. That means there will be 3 blocks. First subscript represents the block size, second subscript represents the row size, and third subscript represents the column size. So here you can say that it will be an array which will be having 3 blocks, and each of these blocks will be of 3 by 3 two-dimensional arrays. So we'll be having total 3 into 3 into 3 elements in it. 3 into 3 gives 9, 9 into 3 gives 27. So there will be 27 elements in this particular three-dimensional array. and it is initialized with a pair of braces. So here you have not given any values in this, hence it will be initializing all the array elements with a value 0 by default. So let us see how it will appear. First block will be having a 3 by 3 matrix, and each of these values will be 0. The second block will be having 3 by 3 matrix, and it will also be initialized with the value 0. And the third block is similarly initialized with the value 0, and it is of row size 3 and column size 3. So this is a 3 by 3 matrix, and the second block is also a 3 by 3 matrix, and the third block is also a 3 by 3 matrix, and all the values in it is initialized with the value 0 by default, since we have not initialized it with any particular value. So this is one method of initializing a three-dimensional array. The second method is initializing with different values. So it takes the form int arr 322. So here we have declared a three-dimensional array with block size 3 and row size 2, column size 2. So this means that there will be 3 blocks, and each of these blocks will be having 2 by 2 two-dimensional arrays or matrices. So we have 3 blocks, and 3 blocks will be having 2 by 2 matrices. So the first block will be having 2 by 2 matrix, which is of 4 different elements. So the first 2 by 2 matrix will be having 4 elements. Second block will be having again 4 elements, and the third block will also be having 4 elements. So this will be arranged in an order. So let us see how it will be looking like. So the first block will be having 4 elements. This is a 2 by 2 matrix, and it will be initialized with the values 0, 1, 2 and 3. Second block is also a 2 by 2 matrix, which will be initialized with the values 4, 5, 6 and 7. And the third block will also be initialized in a similar way. It is also a 2 by 2 matrix with the values initialized as 8, 9, 3 and 2. So this is how this matrix will look like. This is another way of initializing a three-dimensional array. A better method is given next. That is, this is the most efficient method, so that we can understand what are the different elements and what are the different blocks. Here, this is a more specific method. Here we have declared a three-dimensional array with block size 3, row size 3 and column size 3. So the first block, each of these blocks will be represented in a pair of braces, and each row in that particular block will also be represented in a separate pair. So here you can see that the first line represents the block number 1. So this is the block number 1. And the second line here gives the elements in the block 2. And the third row will be having block number 3. And each of these blocks is constituted of a 3 by 3 matrix. So inside this braces, so this pair of braces represents the first block, and inside it each of the rows are given by separate pair of braces. So the first braces pair will represent the first row in the block 1. Second pair of braces will enclose the second row elements in the first block, and third pair of braces will give the third row elements in the first block. In the similar way, the block number 2 and block number 3 will be represented as shown here. So this is how it appears. Block 1 will be having a 3 by 3 matrix. block 2 will also be having a 3 by 3 matrix, and block 3 is also having a 3 by 3 matrix. So this is the third way of initialization, and it is the best method to initialize a three-dimensional array. Now coming to the memory representation, how these three-dimensional arrays are represented or stored in memory. So as you have seen in one-dimensional array and two-dimensional array, every element in multi-dimensional array will be represented or stored in contiguous memory locations. It doesn't take a form of a matrix in actual memory representation. Every time it is represented in a similar way as that of one-dimensional array. So, for example, you can see here, this is an array which is having 3 subscripts, and the block number here is 2, row size is 2, column size is also 2. It means that this array is having 2 blocks, and each of these blocks will be having a 2 by 2 matrix. So here you can see the initialized values. So this represents the block number 1, and this represents the second line represents the block number 2. And first block is having 4 different elements, like arranged like this: 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we have a 2 by 2 matrix. This is block number 1, and the second block will be having another 2 by 2 matrix, which is of elements 5, 6, 7 and 8. But in actual memory, this is not represented like this. It will be having an appearance as a contiguous memory arrangement, which will be stored in memory as shown here. So the elements will be arranged in this fashion in memory. So the first element, that is 1, will be at position A at 0, 0, 0 if the index is starting at 0. So first subscript represents the block number. So here you have 2 different blocks, and the first block will be represented using the subscript 0, and second block will be represented using the subscript 1. So block number 0 means it is the first block, and block number here subscript 1 means it is the block number 2. So all the elements in block 1 is represented in contiguous memory locations, that is shown here. And after that, following that memory location, the next block elements will be represented in a contiguous manner. So 1 represents here the block number 2, and each of these elements are arranged in a contiguous fashion. This is how a three-dimensional array is actually stored in memory. Now, let us see how to insert values into a three-dimensional arrays. That is how you can give values to three-dimensional arrays from keyboard at runtime. So, we have seen in one-dimensional arrays, if you want to insert values into array at runtime, you can use a for loop for this purpose. Similarly, in a two-dimensional array, you have to use 2 different for loops to insert values into a two-dimensional array. So here we have coming across 3 subscripts. So there will be a requirement of 3 for loops for inserting values into a three-dimensional array. So the first loop is for representing the blocks in a three-dimensional array. The second loop is for specifying the number of rows, and the third loop represents the number of columns in it. So let us see how the program can be defined. So the first step is to declare the variables needed for insertion and assigning values to it. So we have to define an array. So here you have declared an array with dimensions 2, 2, 2. It means that we are going to define a array with 2 blocks, and each of the block will be having 2 by 2 matrices. And 3 loops are to be used here. So in order to represent the loop control variables, we have taken 3 different variables I, j and k. Now we have to insert values into the array. So for that we have to use 3 different for loops, and each of these for loop will be beginning at the subscript 0 and it will repeat until it becomes 1, as we have 2 different blocks, 2 different rows and 2 different columns. So this will be having 2 values. So there are 3 for loops used, and same way as we have done in 2-dimensional arrays, we can use the code here. So starting at this for loop, first for loop, the outer for loop is used to represent the block numbers, and it executes for 2 times, as we have 2 different blocks here. And the inner for loops are meant for representing the rows and columns. The first for loop that is represented using the variable j can be used to move across the rows, and the third for loop, that is the innermost for loop, is meant for representing the columns in each row. And we have to insert each of these values into A. A, I, j, k represents the position of the array. So in initial case, the value of, let us take this as an array. So this will be having 2 blocks. So each of these blocks can be represented separately. Now let us take this block as 0. Block number can be represented using the value 0, and the second block can be represented using the value 1. So initially we have I equal to 0. I's value is initialized with 0, and if the condition satisfies, it will be entering into the inner for loop. So here I is initialized with value, so I will be less than 2, and the second for loop will be executed for j is equal to 0. Now the j value is initialized with 0, and if the condition satisfies, it will enter into the inner for loop here. So here also we are initializing the value of k with 0, and if this condition satisfies, then the scanf statement executes. Now you can give a value to this particular location of the array. So here I value is 0, j value is 0 and k value is 0. So let us represent this as, so the row number can also be represented as 0, 1, and column number is also represented by using the values 1. Similarly, in the second block also you will be having 2 row indices and 2 column indices that can be denoted by 0 and 1. Now we are at this particular location, that is every value I, this is I, this is j, and this is for k. So here I, j and k values are 0. Therefore, you will be at this particular location, and you can give any values to this particular location. So the first element in this 3-dimensional array can be given as 2. Let us take it as 2. Now the first value is inserted here. Now the k value will be incremented, and condition will be tested here. K will be incremented by 1, hence k becomes 1, and 1 less than 2, condition satisfies. Again this this statement will be executed, that is scanf. Now I value and j value remains the same here, that is 0 and 0, but k value has been incremented by 1. So 0, 0. I value 0 itself, j value is also 0, but k value has been incremented here. So we will be at this particular position, and you can give any value to this location. Let us give it as 3. So 3 will be stored in this particular location, that is where I value 0, j value 0 and k value is 1. Now again k will be incremented by 1. Now k value is 2. If k value becomes true, then condition will become false. Now the condition has become false and we have to exit out of this loop and move to the outer for loop here. Now j value will be incremented. J value will be incremented by 1 and j becomes 1. Now the condition will be tested, 1 less than 2, it is true. Again this for loop, inner for loop will be executed one more time. Now starting with k equal to 0. Again this k value will be initialized with 0 and condition is tested, condition is true, that is 0 less than 2. Now we have to move to scanf statement again. Here the value of I has become, I is remaining constant, it's 0 itself, and j has incremented by 1. So here I is 0, j is 1 and k is also 0. Now we are at this position, 0, I value 0, j value is 1 and k value 0. So we are at this particular point and you can give any value to this particular location. So let us take it as 4. So 4 will be stored to this location. Again k will be incremented by 1. Now k becomes 1. K value is incremented and k is 1 here and condition will be true. Again scanf will be executed one more time. Now I value is 0, j value is 1 and k value is also 1. So here you can insert the next value. Then coming to incrementing the value of k will become 2. Now the condition is false and it will exit out of this loop and it will move to the increment statement of j. J is incremented by 1. J was previously 1 and now incrementing by 1 it becomes 2. When condition is tested, 2 less than 2 becomes false and this loop will also be exited. Again we will be in the outer for loop. So here I value will be incremented by 1. Now the block is first block is completed. Now we have to insert the values into block 2. Therefore the I value is incremented by 1 and I now becomes 1. So we have reached the block number 1. Again this process will be continued for the second block also. Now condition is tested, 1 less than 2, condition is true and it enters the second for loop, that is j is equal to 0. J is initialized with 0, condition is tested, if condition is true it will enter into the inner for loop here and here j is again initialized with value 0, condition will be tested and moves to scanf statement. Now I value is 1, I value is here 1, I is 1 here and j value is initialized with 0, k value is also initialized with 0. So we will be at this particular location. Here you can insert any value. Let us insert it as 6. Now one more time k will be incremented, k's value will become 1, condition will be true. Again scanf statement will be executed and now the value of I is 1 itself, j is 0 itself and k has been incremented by 1. So we will be at this particular location and here you can give any value. Let us give it as 10. Now this for loop will be exited because by incrementing the value of k by 1 it becomes 2 and the condition will become false. So we have to exit from this for loop and we will be at the outer for loop for j. J will be incremented by 1 and condition will be tested one more time. J is now 1. So condition will be true. Again this for loop will be executed one more time. So this value of I is 1 itself. J has been implemented and has become 1. Now again starting from k equal to 0, k's value will be 0 here. We will be at this particular location and here you can insert another value. Let it be 7. Again k will be incremented. Now k will be incremented by 1. K becomes 1 and again scanf statement will be executed. Now I value is 1 itself, j value is also 1 and k value is incremented by 1, then k becomes 1. So 1 1 1 will be the index of this particular location and here you can insert another value. Let us say you can insert 8 here. So all the elements have been inserted here, and now while implementing k, it will be false for the value 2 and exit out of this loop. Again j will be incremented, j will become 2 and j will be checked with this value, that is 2 less than 2. Here also the condition becomes false, and again we have to reach here, I will be implemented, I becomes 2, and when it is compared with this condition, I less than 2, 2 less than 2 is also false, then it will exit out of this loop and it moves to this particular location. Now you have to print all the values that you have inserted in this array. Now, so same loops are again given here. In order to print the values in the array, we need 3 for loops, and it will be having the same conditions here, and the only difference here is that you have to print the values in this case. So instead of scanf, you have to use printf here. So all the elements will be printed one by one in the same manner. And after completing each of the rows in this array, you will be moving to the next line. Therefore, we have used printf statements here. Printf new line. New line characters are printed in these loops. So this is how you can insert values into a 3-dimensional arrays and display the values in it using 3 different for loops. So that's all about 3-dimensional arrays. Thank you.